So today's opener goes along with what we started yesterday, simplifying square roots. So the first one here, we have the square root of 28. So in order to start this, you're going to look and find, is the square root of 28 a perfect square? Does it work out evenly if you type that into your calculator? So if you try to find the square root of 28 using your calculator, what happens? Yeah, you get a decimal. So when you get that decimal, it means that it's not a perfect square, and you're going to have to simplify it. So when you go to simplify it, you need to look at your note sheet and follow the 4 steps that you guys wrote down yesterday. The first step being factor the radicand. Remember, your radicand is the number on the inside of that square root sign. So we're going to factor the radicand. So what that means, you think of 2 numbers that you can multiply together to get 28. What are 2 numbers you can multiply together to get 28? Okay, so, excuse me for the interruption. So simplify each of the following square roots. So the first part, we're going to factor our radicand. Our radicand is our inside number. It's the number under the square root sign. What are 2 numbers I can multiply together to get 28?
2, 14.
Okay, good.
2.
Because 2 is prime.
And then you can do 2 and 7. And you circle both of those.
Okay, now that's the first part of step 1. Nice job. The second part of step 1 is then we're going to write these as the radical. So, Kelan, how am I going to write this under my square root sign as the radical?
You will put 2.
Times.
And then you do another 2. And then you do another times. And then you do 7.
Good. Now make sure your square root sign covers all of your numbers, okay? You want to make sure it's nice and long. So that's all of step 1. So step 1 is probably our longest step that we have to complete. Step 2 then says, circle my pairs. What are my pairs here, Jalen? Circle my pairs. What are my pairs?
2.
The 2's. So I'm going to circle those, and then I'm going to move to step 3. Jaden, step 3 says, I'm going to cancel one of my 2's with the square root sign. And where does that 2 then moves to? The bottom? On the inside or outside? And it becomes a single coefficient on the outside. What am I still stuck with on the inside? 7. Now my last step says to simplify, which means multiply your outside numbers, your coefficient numbers, and multiply your inside numbers, your radicands. Can I do that here? Nah. So box it, right. That is my answer. Good. You just got that one?
Yeah.
Good. Now let's look at this one. See how many of you guys can get this one. Now, as I said earlier, we are going to ignore this coefficient, the number on the outside, till step 3. So we're going to ignore the coefficient till step 3. So step 1, factor my radicand. Kira, what 2 numbers can I multiply together to get 80? 8 and 10. Or 40 and 2. Michael, what 2 numbers can I multiply together to get 8?
4 and 2.
And what do I do with my 2? What do I do with my 4? No? I can factor it. So what 2 numbers can you multiply together to get 4? 2 and 2. Okay? What 2 numbers can I multiply together to get 10, Michael?
Excuse me?
What 2 numbers can I multiply now together to get 10?
5 times 2.
Good. Danielle, now that I've factored my radicand, what do I do?
You put all in order.
Okay. I told you guys to ignore that coefficient 5, but I'm going to go ahead and bring it over like this. I'm going to write it on the outside of my square root sign now, so I don't totally forget about it. But we're not going to do anything with it besides just move it over for now. So you said put them in order under the square root sign, which will be in the radical position. So what are they in order under the square root sign?
2.
I want Danielle to answer this one.
2 times 2 times 2 times 5.
Good. Okay? All of that is step 1. Step 2, Damon, is what? What does step 2 tell me to do?
Oh.
Okay, you see it there. What's step 2 say to do? Damon, flip your notes over, kiddo.
So compare some factors in there.
Okay, so what are your factor pairs here?
Two of those.
Yeah.
Two.
And then what happens? We move to step 3, and step 3 says to do what?
Each factor pair in the radical becomes a single factor in the, how do you say that word?
Coefficient. So what happens, because square cancels with square root, my second 2 cancels with the square root sign, and they move to a single number on the outside. But I already have a number on the outside, right? What's the number I already have on the outside? So I need to make sure I keep that 5 there, but I'm also going to add how many 2's to the outside?
2.
Yeah. And then what's stuck on the inside is the radicand. What didn't have a pair to cancel out with?
4.
What number stuck under there yet?
4.
5. Now we can do step 4 in this one. So step 4 says to simplify. Simplify means we're going to multiply our coefficients together, and then we're going to look to multiply our radicand together if possible. You cannot mix your coefficient with your radicands. They have to stay separate, okay? So if I multiply my coefficients together, I'm going to take 5 times 2 times 2. When you multiply your coefficients together, what do you get? 5 times 2 is what, you guys? 10. 10 times 2 is 20. And then, what's the last part of my answer? Just like that? What do I got to do to that 5? What's that thing I put over it?
You took away.
The square root sign, right? So my final answer is 20 square root 5. I'm warning you guys now, you will have one like this on your quiz on Friday. Okay? All right, so go ahead, flip it over to the back side. While you're waiting for me to turn mine over to the back side, go ahead and start factoring. Okay. So now we have the square root of 4,500 or 4,500. Give me 2 factors that I can multiply together to get 4,500. Say it again.
140.
Okay, so you're going to take 100 times 45. Good. Okay, go ahead and factor 45 for me, David.
5,009.
Okay. Keep going.
Then, once you circle,
You got it.
I'm just going to circle that.
I sure am because it's prime. Then what?
And then if 100, you know.
Oh, wait. What do I do with this guy? The 9.
The 9. Once you bring it down.
Okay, and what times what equals 9?
1 and 9.
What else, though? If I do 1 and 9, I'm going to do that forever.
Oh, 3 times 3.
There you go, much better. And what do I do with my 3s?
Circle.
Because they are primed. Good, now I can move to the 100. What are my 2 factors I can multiply together to get 100? 10 and 10. Easy enough, right? 2 factors of 10 is what, David?
2 and 5.
And then I'm going to use the same factors for the next 10, which is 2 and 5. Good. So that's the first part of step 1 is factor my radicand. The second part of step 1 is put these in order under the square root sign. So I'm going to rewrite them as the radical. Kira, what is this going to look like under the square root sign rewritten in order?
2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 5 times 5 times 5.
Okay, first of all, what's wrong with how I have this written?
Nothing?
There's some big time wrong.
You ain't circled none.
Nope, not yet I haven't, but I'm...
There's another 5 missing.
Nope, there's not another 5 missing.
But there's 3.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Michael's right. Give yourself a +2 on your paper. But there's something else that I need to do that I haven't. My line needs to be longer, absolutely. Yeah, you want to make sure, I know, right? But if that line doesn't cover it, then it's not part of the radicand. Okay? And that's a very different
It really got
outcome.
So
It
we'll
really
go
has
back.
to be long enough. So if you turn into a paper or a quiz into me, and you don't have that square root line covering all of your radicans, you will get points off. So make sure that line covers it. All right, we're finally ready to move to step 2, which is circle my factor pairs. What are my factor pairs, Kaylon?
Two. I mean, yeah, those twos, those threes,
And then 2
and
and 5.
those fives.
Okay. What happens with these factor pairs, Jalen?
It's only 3 5, so you had to cut the other 5 out.
So the other 5 is by itself. So what happens to these pairs that we have now? Step 3. We're ready to move to step 3. Well, they're going to cancel with the square root sign and move where?
To the bottom, so it'd be like 2 times.
To the bottom where, though? As a coefficient or as a radicand? Outside or inside?
Coefficient.
Yeah, coefficient. So you're going to have 2 times,
Oh, 3.
put the pick away, please. 3 times
5.
5. And then what do I do?
And you put the little, I forgot what you call it. Too.
Hey guys, what's this thing here called? Again, the thing that I'm going to draw right now, what is this called? You have to know that name. Square root sign. And what goes under that square root sign? The 5.
That was.
So then we move to step 4. Step 4,
2 times 3 times 5.
which is,
You do 30.
and then,
I guess you do 30 times 5.
no, why can't I take 30 times 5?
Why all these numbers be multiplied? Okay.
Why can't I take 30 times 5, guys?
Because it's a big number.
No?
Because it'll equal almost. I know.
No? Why can't I take these numbers and combine it with the radicand? Why can't I combine a coefficient with the radicand? No, you just can't do that. You keep them separate. So you move these out of the square root sign, out of the radicand, because they canceled with the square root. So you can only combine the coefficients and you can only combine the radicand. You can't combine them together.
So what was that problem we did yesterday when you did this?